How about the...
Yeah.
Do you think there might be any room sometime in the future for, I guess, Pathfinder historical fiction? It seems like going through the campaign setting, there's a lot of really interesting little tidbits that are fed to you. And you're like, oh, that'd be a good story arc.
No, we have actually talked about that, specifically in the context of, every time we say we're not looking for giant world-ending stories, people come back and say, but I love giant world-ending stories. And one of the ways we've talked about is, if you go back into the past and write about, a cataclysm that already happened, and as long as you keep with the continuity, you can have the giant world-ending story. If we wanted to do something with the Starfall, we can totally do that. And it's certainly been done before, to great effect in tie-in fiction. So far, nobody's really pitched me that, and I'm fine either way. Right now, I'm most interested in people creating new characters, because our world is still very young. As much as we've detailed it, I would love to find some new people can get really attached to. But yeah, I have no problem with people playing with historical figures and events.
Yeah, I agree. I can see us doing that.
Yeah.
It's all going to come down to the proposals and what we think is coolest. And if somebody can give us a really kick-ass proposal that's set 300 years, 3,000 years in the past, then we'll probably do that.
And that's part of our editorial strategy with this from the beginning, which is something I stress with all the authors I contact, is we really are not in the business of giving them a 10,000 word outline for their novel and saying, here's your characters, here's the events that you have to hit, go, because I think that doesn't lead to the best fiction. I mean, we give them as few guidelines as we can and just say, make magic, do what you do, and inevitably the stories are better because of it. So yeah, if somebody gets really hooked on history.
We've got about 5 minutes left, so let's try and get
Wow.
2 quick questions. Anybody who hasn't asked a question yet?
Yeah.
You guys talked about doing short stories anthologies. Have you guys thought about doing like a shared characters anthology like the original Peace Roll?
You mean, well,
That was a shared world, not.
that was more.
I guess
shared.
there was a little bit of characters back and forth. But the first book wasn't. The first book didn't really have any shared characters in it. It was the
Some
second
characters
books
were
and
some
third
same
books.
story.
So it's one of my favorite.
I mean, everything that we do is set in the world of Galarian, and then by extension is owned by Paizo. And so, if let's just say Chris writes a story with a female fighter, and James writes a story with a male wizard, and at some point during the 5th story in his character's arc, he's like, it'd be really cool to bring in Chris's character. A, we can do that because we own the characters. B, I strongly would suggest and expect that James would say, hey Chris, I'm thinking about using your character. Are you cool with it? Maybe I'll send you a draft of what I'm doing and you can comment so I get the voice right or whatever. And we're certainly going to be open to that. But on the same token, what we don't want to do is have Chris create this female fighter character and then have, he can't write a novel because he's having a kid or something like that. So we just have James write a character, his character. That's not a very good way to build loyalty with your writers.
Or with your readers, because people know. You can tell the difference.
Other question.
One more.
Last question goes to Mastodon
Well, you say you're always looking for the next big author and everything. What do you do with unsolicited material? Do you somebody just sends you something, you toss it?
We are not accepting unsolicited material right now because we just don't have the capacity. We're always going 300 miles an
I would
hour.
go so far as to say that we would never accept unsolicited material for any of our product lines, including the game.
There's actually legal issues. We
Yeah.
can't.
Okay.
And more importantly, what Lisa was talking about a few minutes ago, by the end of the day on Monday, we will have solicited all the products through April 2010. I have to know, in general terms, every single product through December of 2010. I have to be thinking about products in 2011. So if there is a really kick-ass manuscript that comes in, and let's just say I throw caution to the wind and don't get worried about the legal stuff Lisa's talking about, being sued or whatever, even if I thought it was the best idea in the world, and Sutter thought it was the best idea in the world, and we said, well, lordy me, we didn't ask for it, but they produced exactly what we wanted. The soonest that we could get it on the schedule would be like 2 years from now. And that's just not, I would rather be a lot more methodical about, okay, when do we want to put these books out? Who do we want to have write it? You know, et cetera. And it's just not, and honestly, frankly, people sending unsolicited manuscripts is a pretty good red flag that that person's not professional. And, you know, people who are professional writers, you know, Neil is nodding his head here. Neil won the RPG Superstar contest. So Neil doesn't need to send an unsolicited manuscript to us. Neil can send an email to us and go, hey, I'd love to write this module. What do you think? And we know who he is. We know what we're going to be able to expect from his turnover. And then we can talk about it and say, hey, Neil's got this kind of cool idea. Maybe we should throw that on. If you consider that unsolicited, well, then we do that fairly frequently.
Yeah.
But if Neil had tried that 3 years ago, we wouldn't know who he was, and so we wouldn't know what to expect. We wouldn't know whether it was going to be on time. We wouldn't know whether he had any kind of burgeoning audience that he's building through his excellent freelance work. So, there's just no chance. So you have to know us, you know. And coming to PaizoCon's a really good idea. Coming to Gen Con's a really good idea. So eventually, you know, Nick Logue is one of our writers for the game company. For the first couple of years, all I knew about Nick was that he's that one guy from Hawaii who comes to Gen Con. I didn't know his name. I didn't know anything. And then he started bringing macadamia nuts, which was a pretty good bribe. Yeah, they were dark chocolate, not milk chocolate. So, and he learned that, and so then he became the macadamia nut guy, and then he became macadamia nut guy Nick, and now he doesn't bring me macadamia nuts. But I take his phone calls because I know who he is, and so there's a networking element to it. There's a getting your stuff known. There's building an audience for yourself. There's so many factors that go into when we decide who's going to write what. That we just can't. We do not have the time to deal with somebody that's an unknown factor.
And working through the proper channels also shows us that you can work with us and work as a team and, you know, follow instructions essentially, which is huge. Like, we have to know that we can count on our contributors to do what we need.
I would say if there's anybody in the audience right now who's like, yeah, I hear ya. You know, I hear Sutter say he doesn't even want to publish a book by Lisa. I hear that, you know, only big name authors are gonna be the, you know, in the first year. But damn it, you know, I can't take a hint. I want to write a Pathfinder novel. Well, somebody in this room who isn't sitting at this table maybe will write a Pathfinder novel. But the best advice that I can give you is, right now, probably to write a Pathfinder Society scenario. We have a voracious appetite for those things. You can get to work with Josh, and Josh will help develop your manuscript. Josh will get to know your writing, and periodically the boys in the pit, which is what we call our editorial area, will come to Josh and they'll say, hey, we need somebody to write, this guy dropped out at the last minute, we need somebody to write this other thing. Do you have anybody from Pathfinder Society? And he'll say, oh yeah, this guy's pretty good, and then we might give that guy an assignment. And maybe that guy then writes something for Pathfinder proper, and maybe then that guy writes a novel. That's how it works. You don't just sort of go, hey, I'd like to write a book, and, you know, I mean, I probably get one of those a week. Just some random dude. I wrote this book. It's about psychic fairies in the 1950s, you know. You know, I have to think, what the hell? Why do you think they would publish that? You know, and it's because they want us to publish their thing. But we want to publish our thing, and maybe you can help us write it. Well, that's really all I have to say.
I can't believe we actually pulled an hour of it.
It's
awesome.